we're going to start off with the Cosby Show's Malcolm Jamal Warner, affectionately known as Theo. Well, he got married in 2022, just died tragically by a accident last year while on vacation with his family. Well, Tanisha Warner, the widow of Malcolm Jamal Warner, who, of course, we all know is suing the Warner's mother over access to his trust. Warner filed a lawsuit on the first anniversary of the actor's tragic death, seeking more than 1.2 million dollars from Warner's mother, Pamela Warner, who oversees his trust. Warner was 54 when he died, while on vacation with his family in Costa Rica. In a statement, her counsel, the now widow, indicated she tried to resolve what she called her husband's complicated estate privately while honoring his last wishes concerning their daughter, Mackenzie. She stated he had every intention to provide for their 9-year-old daughter and her, the widow, and in the petition, she says that the 1996 trust, which was established before her and Malcolm met, got together, got married, and had a child, allocates 100% of that trust to the family, including his mother, father, and a half sister. The court papers allege that the money from the life insurance and retirement accounts had already been paid out to the beneficiaries, totaling a little bit over $1 million. And the filing also alleges Warner failed to complete multiple financial obligations to his wife and daughter before he perished. And so this is going to be an interesting and complicated story, Jimmy, that we're going to have to keep track on. We've had,
Tom, not that complicated, man.
well, I'll put it this way. Yeah, this is in the state of Georgia. I don't know everything about Georgia law, but it also seems that they did have a prenuptial agreement before they got married, days before they got married. And so there's going to be, of course, an argument or a case that they were unintentionally omitted from the trust, number one, but also that there was a prenuptial agreement that did indicate that there was a $1 million life insurance policy that,
Right, but the prenup. So this is the danger. This is good and the bad about trust, especially a blind trust. And basically, a trust is a living instrument that protects your assets.
correct,
And a blind trust gives you even more protection because you don't control the assets that's inside the trust. You put stuff in, and you have a trust administrator or an
correct,
insurance company or a lawyer or someone you trust to be your trust administrator, and they own the trust. And they
correct.
can take money out of the trust and give it to you to live off of, which is generally the instructions when you set the trust up. But Tom, a trust like that is generally ironclad. Now, her prenup was with him, not with the trust. The trust is considered almost like a separate person. And if that's a blind trust, she's going to be in a. She may be able to dissolve a what's called a normal trust, maybe. And we'll have to see what Georgia law said. But if it's a blind trust, it's going to be near impossible to dissolve that because she doesn't own it, and even Malcolm Jamal Warner doesn't own it, so he couldn't even dissolve it if he wanted to. Whoever the trust administrator is owns the trust and has to run it for whatever period of time you set it up for. Some people set them up for 100 years. Some people set them up for life, depending on how many assets you have. But that thing is set up to protect your assets. So she may have a hard time cracking that veil. She's like any other debtor now. She's in line saying, "Hey, my husband owed me money. He left money to me in a prenup. He left for intentions to take care of my daughter, our daughter, and yeah, well, if it was a will, she'd have a lot better chance of fighting it. But that trust, uh, is almost like an ironclad will, Tom. That's why you set them up, but you have to be careful. If you are married and you have a trust set up, make absolutely sure that if one of y'all survive the other, that the trust is set up where you take over control of the trust. Because if you
Right,
leave it in the hands of somebody else, if it's a blind trust, you have no control over it, and your spouse dies, like in this situation,
correct.
then you may be SOL unless there's instructions in the trust to pay you a certain amount of money each month, each week, or each year, some distribution for you and your children to live off of. Evidently, he didn't do that, so um, she may have a rough time here, Tom.
I would agree with you on that, Jimmy, and I want to correct myself. Carol said actually I can hear y'all, not can't. So I apologize.
Okay.
But I would agree with you, Jimmy. Uh, they have a 9-year-old daughter, I believe. and they got married in 2022. So they had been together a long time, or a long enough time, in my opinion, that some amendments should have been made to this trust while he was still living, unless it was irrevocable trust. In the case where it's an irrevocable trust, you might have some challenge, but if it's a revocable trust, then you can make some
Yeah, if it's
adjustments.
revocable, then you can dissolve it and you have some control over it. The
Correct.
other thing that may help, if she put her assets into the trust, she may be able to revoke it on that grounds, saying, "Well, I put assets, but all of the assets, if it
There's
was
no
set up
indication.
before,
There's no indication that the wife, now the widow, put assets in.
yeah, all the assets were his that went into the trust, yeah, she may have a rough time, especially if mom doesn't agree. I would hope that mom does the right thing and take some of the money, whatever money's in. I'm sure you got some royalty payments coming in. There's some money coming into the estate that the mother would use to make sure his daughter is taken care of. So I hope she does the right thing without this having to go to court and become
Yeah,
a big fight, and then the lawyers end up with everything.
yeah. And again, we have had over the years people to talk about, and we ourselves have talked about the importance of having your desires will in estate planning, which a trust can be included in that. Most,
Yes.
unfortunately, in our community, over half, if my understanding is correct, don't even have a will, a simple will in place, much less a trust, which costs a little bit more money but gives you a little bit more control, or a lot
A
of bit
lot more protection, Tom,
as well.
especially against people trying to attach your assets. Other than maybe even the irrevocable blind trust even gives you protection against the IRS. Believe it or
But
not. So
yeah, but the unfortunate thing, Jimmy, is this shouldn't have happened. I know that
it
everyone.
shouldn't have. They should have modified this once they got married, Tom, especially when they had the child. And I know we don't think about these things. We don't think about death but when it happens, we're always unprepared for it. But yeah, they should have taken care of this long before. And sometimes it's hard to just modify a trust. Sometimes you have to dissolve it and just create a new one. Um, but yeah, they should have done this before, once they got married, especially when they had a child, to make sure everything was taken care of.
We don't know the entire value of his estate, but clearly it looks like it's well over $1.5 million. I don't know if there are things that we don't know publicly that may be
Well, it sounded
involved.
like that was just the insurance money, but I'm
Right.
sure there's maybe some TV royalty money
I would think
coming
so.
in also. Yes.
So, I mean, it's worth it to spend the money to make sure that you get your affairs in order. And quite frankly, if you're doing this the right way, and especially if you have a complicated estate, you need to review through this, you know, once a year, at least every couple of years, especially depending on age, the number of children, grandchildren, other things that you may have going on business wise. It's worth it to go ahead and spend the money because I can guarantee you this, and I've seen it unfortunately very close to home. If you don't do it, it's going to cost you a lot more money and a lot
It
more
will,
headache.
Tom.
If you
Just
don't, then if you go ahead,
right.
bite the bullet, pay for it while you're still in your right mind, and it will save you a lot of. I mean, people may not like or agree with every decision that you make, but at least it's yours because if it isn't yours, guess what? Who's going to make the decision? The courts. And most
Right.
people do not want the courts making decisions over their affairs, but that's exactly what happens in the majority of cases.
Yeah, you don't want to go into probate court fight these things out. Like I said, it's long drawn out battles, and in the end, a lot of the assets are drained off by the lawyers. You end up having to pay legal fees, and that eats up into a lot of the assets. You may not have anything left fighting over afterwards.
Yeah. So bottom line is, if you want to screw your family over and cost them a lot of money, then don't do it. Otherwise,
Right.
at a minimum,
Get a
get a
will.
will. Get get
Yeah,
get
at minimum, get a will.
get
If
a
you need
will.
asset protection, get a trust, especially if you want to control how your assets after you die and for generations to come. Set up a living trust. You can set up a blind trust if you want to put in the hands of somebody else to manage it for you, where you're totally protected asset wise. But yeah, just review those things from time to time and make sure that they still the trust or the will or everything else complies with what you really want to happen after you die. Because once you're dead, it's too late to modify or to
All
do
bets
anything.
off. Will,
All bets are off.
medical power of attorney, durable power of attorney. At a minimum.
Yeah, at a
Everybody.
minimum.
I don't care.